Linda Freire. Linda was working for Pan Am at the time of the bombing. She was on the Pan Am emergency response team to the Lockerbie tragedy. In 2015, Linda co-founded and is the chair of the Pan Am Museum Foundation in Garden City, New York. Linda, thanks so much for joining us. Can you describe where you were when you got news of the bombing and what your experience was like that day?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Julie. I was a supervisor at the JFK Flight Service office, and the call came in from operations indicating that the 103 was off radar. We understood what that meant and immediately pulled up a crew list, and it was within a short amount of time before we were notified that the plane was down. I then proceeded over to the terminal to be of assistance there, and at that point, notification was pretty much dispersed. People were arriving at the terminal, media was arriving at the terminal, and it was frightening because a lot of the parents of the students from Syracuse University were arriving, and this was clearly not news anyone wanted to give or hear. It was a day that lives with me forever. It stays with me as if it were yesterday.
I can imagine. It just, yeah, you could never, ever really forget this or put this behind you. What was it like, though, being on that emergency response team?
Well, working for an airline, your training all throughout your career is to be ready for any eventuality. We just clicked. We jumped into motion, and we have checklists. We have procedures on what we're supposed to be doing. I knew within a matter of hours that I was going to be getting on a plane and flying over to London. And I spent the next month and a half in London and traveling to Lockerbie. And Pan Am was very good in setting up liaisons. Members of the response team were assigned to passenger families as well as crew member families. And I was a liaison to two of the French-speaking flight attendants to their families in France. The next month, to tell you the truth, it was kind of a blur because we were on automatic. It was good to have the training. It was good to have all the procedures because we followed those to the T, but you couldn't help but be caught up in the emotional aspect. We were also suffering as our family members were killed in that terrible bombing as well. It was traumatic, but we needed to keep our composure. We needed to be professional. We needed to show compassion. We needed to be helpful. We didn't want the families to have to go through any kind of trouble or discomfort just arranging, whether it be a flight to get over to Lockerbie, whether it be a hotel room, whatever it was that they needed, we wanted to be there to take care of that.
Yeah, that's so
nice.
And
we did.
Well, what are your thoughts now that the suspected bomber is being brought in custody here in the U.S.?
Well, I was surprised when I heard the news, but I was grateful and I was appreciative that even though it's been 34 years since the bombing, this was not a cold case. They had not forgotten. Just because Pan Am doesn't exist doesn't mean these families do not still suffer greatly for the loss, this horrible loss that can never be justified. It can never. You're never the same again. So I was happy to hear that, whatever measure of happiness you can have in this type of situation. But I was grateful to know that after years, really, of trying to obtain the bomber and extradite him to the United States, that this has finally happened, and he is now on U.S. soil and will be hopefully going through the U.S. legal system and charged appropriately in our courts.
Yes. Well, let's talk a little bit about the museum, the foundation. You were inspired to create the Pan Am Museum Foundation. Why is that?
Well, it was 25 years actually when we founded the museum, since Pan Am had closed its doors. And we know the history of this airline. It was an incredibly a significant, iconic airline. It basically, with the founder Juan Trippe, established so many firsts and built commercial aviation through the last century. Juan Trippe, who is the founder and CEO of the airline, was quite an entrepreneur, profiled in movies, of course, and much is written about him. But it was also the people of Pan Am. And that's what we wanted to do with the museum. Some people say we're an aviation museum, but we're really a museum about the people and the stories of the people of Pan Am. Most people have no idea the significance and what Pan Am accomplished in 64 years of its history. We're very saddened, obviously, that our airline, the family that we had, no longer exists. But we also have this museum that we can call home, that we can relive that history, that we can preserve that history, and we can pass it on to generations to come. It's an important lesson. People do not know how involved Pan Am was throughout its history in World War II, in helping and being a significant force in the Pacific and winning the war in the Pacific, as well as in the Vietnam War and the two wars in Iraq. We were there.
Huge piece of history.
When the country needed us, we were there.
Yeah, absolutely. Linda Freire, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Thank you so much for having me.
A new report released in the aftermath of the deadly school shooting in Uvalde, Texas, uncovers more troubling facts. This time, the focus is on the Uvalde County Sheriff's Department and how it was ill-prepared for the attack that left 19 children and 2 teachers dead. Justice correspondent Jamal Andrus has more details from Texas.
Fallout from the massacre at Robb Elementary School continued Monday. A new report shows the Sheriff's Department in Uvalde didn't have active shooter training or protocol on the books at the time of the shooting. A 2-month investigation commissioned by the county examined the rules of the Sheriff's Department at the time of the May 24th shooting. The report did